Hey guys, this is Cookie Cosplay here. I've had a couple of requests to show people how I draft all my patterns. For those of you who don't know, I'm a kind of oddly shaped girl, and so domestic patterns don't really fit me properly, and they're also a little bit daunting to me with all of the different lines and icons and things. I'm sure I could figure it out, but I just can't be bothered. So basically I draft all of my patterns from scratch. I have a bodice sloper that I start with, and I make everything from there. So I've had a couple people ask me how I make my patterns. So I thought I'd just show you guys today a quick rundown of how I do things. Everything I learned from YouTube basically. So basically what I have is something called a bodice sloper, and it's basically just a simple fitted pattern. It's just basic. It goes, it's got armholes. It goes to my neck. A lot of bodice slopers have a bit of a bigger neck hole, which is sort of like the minimum size for it to slip on and off of your head. But what I rather do is I have that line marked, but then you can see my bodice sloper here. I have a zip in it as well, so that I can have it go all the way to my neck, and I'm able to make patterns that fit to there as well. So basically what my bodice sloper does is it's a pre-fitted pattern to my body. It's almost like having an adjustable mannequin, really, that you could drape things on. But adjustable mannequins for my size are very expensive, so instead of having an adjustable mannequin, which would be lovely, I have a bodice sloper, which essentially I put it on and I just draw directly onto it where I want my cosplay to be. You can see there's a couple markings on here already. There's an underbust one from when I made Cyber, although I've used that quite frequently. There's a line here for like as low as my neckline can be before my bra or my corset shows. It's like a comfortable line for my neckline. I've used that a couple times. There's a couple other markings on here that I put sort of default, so that when I have put markings onto it with a marker for a cosplay, I can then easily transfer it. So a couple markings I have is I've got a seam all the way down the center front, so that I can mark from the center front how far out something has to go. Like for example, there's a line here for where the decoration on Cyber went, so I was able to say, okay, 2 centimeters from here, 2 centimeters from here, so on and so forth. And then for the same reason I also have, what side is it on? I also have, it's very difficult to see, but there is a line of stitching across here, and that line of stitching matches up to a line on my bodice sloper pattern, so that I can say, okay, 5 centimeters across, 2 centimeters down from that line. And it just helps me speed up the process of transferring patterns. You'll notice that my bodice sloper has one sleeve on it. I do this so that if I'm making a cosplay that doesn't have a sleeve, I can use this size to figure it out. If I'm making one that does have a sleeve, I can use this one to figure it out, and I can figure out, how long my sleeve needs to be to get to where I need it, or whether I need it to be puffy to a certain level or something like that. I'll get into puffiness in a second. So how to use the bodice sloper? It's very, very easy. You just put it on, draw exactly where you want everything to be, take it off, transfer those markings to your bodice sloper pattern. I usually trace a bodice sloper pattern, like a fresh one, and then add the markings to that, and then cut apart the fresh one in order to make a new pattern, basically. And so I have a box here of patterns that I've done this with, where I've just copied the bodice sloper pattern, altered it, and then made my new pattern. And that speeds up the process a lot as well, because then I can say, oh, my Rico outfit, for example, had a very similar cut to my Cyber outfit, where it had an underbust and it had a strip that goes across. So when I made Rico, I took my Cyber pattern and I just altered that, because I already had a pattern that was made for that. And you can see the back as well has similar markings on it. So the bodice sloper, it's pretty simple. It's just a basic fitted pattern, and it just has a couple darts. Mine has darts in the front and the back. I think most people have a small dart in the back. My dart in the back is quite big because I have quite a curved back. And my darts in this case go from the shoulder to my bust point and then down. And You can look up tutorials as well. You can look up tutorials on how to make this, which is what I did. I basically Googled how to make a bodice sloper pattern. I found some YouTube tutorials, I followed their instructions, and I found, because I am a strange shape, I did had to alter it, so I made their instructions, I made it a little bigger than I should have, and then I just took it in on me, and then I just cut that mock-up apart and used that to make my sloper. And I took it, you know, it's been a couple of versions. This is V4, I think, of my bodice sloper pattern, and the better my bodice sloper pattern, the better my cosplays get, because this is the foundation for all of my cosplays. But you'll get the hang of it eventually. You'll learn what needs to be changed in order to do things, and eventually you'll get to the point where your bodice sloper, you know, it's dependable and you can make fairly nice cosplays with it every time. What was I saying? Alright, I edited that part out because I completely forgot my train of thought. Also, sorry if there's a lot of noise. I live on a fairly busy street and it's a fairly hot day, so I've got my windows open. There's not really anything I can do about it. You might every now and then occasionally hear a bit of music in the background. So that's how I make my patterns. I start with a bodice sloper. I've got my bodice sloper, which most bodice slopers go to your waist. I've extended mine to go to my hips so that I have a little bit more room for making patterns when I'm drawing on directly onto myself. I've got my sleeve sloper, which I just made. There's a bit of thread hanging from it. Apparently it's attached. I basically just made by following a tutorial on how to transfer sleeve patterns from existing shirts. So this was just made from a shirt that already fits me. And I also used that shirt to fix the armhole of my sloper as well, because no matter what tutorials I followed, I could not figure out how to get my armhole right. So I just copied it from a shirt that I had that already fit, that I basically just cut apart. And you can find a lot of tutorials for how to do that with clothes. You know, if you've got an item of clothing that already suits what you're trying, you know, it's already close to the cosplay you're trying to make, you can just copy, you can find a tutorial to copy that pattern. It's not too difficult. You don't always have to cut it apart either. That's just the easiest way to do it. I also have a couple of collar patterns that match up with my bodice sloper pattern, so they match this collar. I also have a bloomer pattern. I don't have a pants pattern because I have not yet needed to make pants, so I just have a bloomers pattern for puffy pants. And I don't have patterns drawn up for them, but I do also use circle skirts and rectangular skirts, which I would highly recommend learning how to make. Just look up YouTube tutorials for them. They're very easy, and once you know how to make those two sorts of skirts, you can basically make any sort of skirt you want. It's super easy. So those are the foundations for all of my cosplays. The only thing I find is that you will need to learn how to slash and spread. Slash and spreading is basically what you do if you want to add more fabric to your pattern. So for example, the top section for Rico was gathered. So to do that, I took the section that I had from the bodice sloper and I cut it into even sections, and then I spread each of those sections by an even amount. And I believe I only spread it at the top, so it made a pattern that sort of looked like that. You know, it started as a strip and it ended up as a big curve like this with a pretty long top end. And I did that so that only the top would be gathered and then the bottom just still had my darts in it, just to give myself a little bit more of a fit. And you do the exact same thing for sleeves. If you want a sleeve that's puffy the whole way along, then you would slash and spread evenly on both ends, or the top and bottom. So you would take your sleeve pattern. I wonder if I have a sleeve pattern here that I can show you. Is this a sleeve? This is my puff sleeve pattern actually. But so this is much bigger than your sleeve sloper would be, but you get the general idea. So this is for an even sleeve pattern, and you can even see the little markings on it from when I was making this pattern. So basically what I did is I had a smaller sleeve pattern which fits comfortably as a sleeve. Then what I did is I cut it into even sections and then I spread it evenly. And I spread it evenly at the bottom and the top, so it was, you know, like an inch or something like that. You can test different sizes to see how puffy you want something. You know, if you don't want it super puffy, just add a little bit each section. If you want it super puffy, add a lot. And then what I did is I just, you know, I lined them up on a piece of paper and I just traced along. It won't be, you know, super straight. The patterns will be like, here's one, and here's one, and here's one. They won't line up perfectly, but you can just sort of guide it. Just sort of smooth it out. And you'll end up with a puffy sleeve pattern. And likewise, if you wanted it to be, you know, puffy at the top but fitted at the bottom, you would only add it to the top, the extra fabric. So it would be, you know, triangles. And likewise, if you want it to be puffy at the bottom but fitted at the top, you would do upside down triangles where you've just added it at the bottom and the top it's still touching. And you can basically do that for anything. It's essentially how a bloomer's pattern would be made. You would start with a pant sloper and you would slash and split it to add the extra puffiness. And you can really do it for any part of your costume that requires extra fabric in it. So you can look up a lot of tutorials. If you just Google how to slash and spread a pattern, it should be fairly easy to find something. Something else I would also recommend looking into is Professor Pincushion on YouTube. She has amazing tutorials. It's where I've learned most of my things, because there's other things you'll need to know that, you know, it's easier for you to go Google them rather than me tell you every single thing that you should ever need to know. You know, some basic things I would recommend is learn how to do buttonholes and button plackets, how to install zips, how to attach collars, French seams, things like that. A French seam is basically you sew a seam, then you flip it the other way around, you sew it again, so that when you turn everything the right way around, your seam is completely enclosed on the inside and nothing frays. It's a good option for if you don't have an overlocker, which I do not. Or you can zigzag. You know, there's a lot of tutorials for how to finish seams, which is another thing that you should look up, how to finish seams. There's a lot of different ways you can do. But yeah, so there's some basic things that you need to learn how to do, you know, how to use elastic channels, how to make elastic channels, all sorts of things that Professor Pincushion has fabulous tutorials for, and I would definitely recommend learning from her how to do all of those things. She's a brilliant tutor, and everything on her YouTube channel is free. So that's the basics of my bodice sloper. Everything I make comes from my bodice sloper. Occasionally I'll make something that I've already made a pattern similar to, and I'll use that. For example, my puff sleeve pattern I use quite frequently. My cyber pattern I use quite frequently because it's already got the underbust cut and it's already got the top cut. I use that quite frequently. I don't keep patterns for skirts because they're super easy to make. You know, rectangular skirt, I basically just make a strip 2.5 times my waist, and I just gather that in. Circle skirt, likewise, I take my measurements, I draw a circle, done. So that's the basics of how I make my cosplays. What else have I got written on here? Shirring. So shirring is an extremely useful tool, especially if you are not too good at fitting your patterns. What shirring is, and you can Google it, S-H-I-R-R-I-N-G. What shirring is basically you take a panel on usually the back of your outfit, you make that panel separate and a little bigger than it needs to be, and then you sew in elastic thread, and I can show you some. It's just comes on a little roll. It's very cheap. This was like $2, and it's just elastic thread. You sew that in. There's a few different techniques for doing it, and it'll make the panel elastic so that when you put it on, it'll pull in and it'll fit everything better to you. It's extremely useful, especially if you've got a weird shape like me where you find that it's going to be difficult to sell a cosplay because it's not going to fit other people because it's too fitted. I find shirring is extremely useful for that, and it just makes everything fit a lot nicer with, you know, very effortlessly. There we go. So yeah, I find that's extremely useful. So that's basically everything for how I make my patterns. If anyone has any questions, feel free to ask me. Definitely check out Professor Pincushion. She's got a lot of great tutorials. Very useful. Learned most of what I know through her. Definitely look into some tutorials for how to put in zips, how to make collars, how to copy patterns from existing clothing. All of that stuff is extremely useful, and don't forget to also look up tutorials for just basic things like how to sew a seam, and, you know, how to do a French seam, how to finish a seam, how to finish, you know, an edge, how to roll hem. Things like that are all extremely useful. So that's everything. I hope this video helps, and if you need any help, just flick me a message. If you're Facebook friends with me, it's easiest to do it through there. You can drop a comment in the comments below, or you can message me on my Instagram at CookieDoesStuff. And yeah, I'm happy to help. This isn't exact science, I'm not a professional, but this is just how I make my cosplays, and it's worked perfectly fine for me. And while there's no exact right or wrong, you know, right or wrong way to do something, this is the way I do it. I find it works really well for me. The longer I'm doing it, the easier it gets. And yeah, I find if you're thank you, Lurkheart. If you find domestic patterns are a little nerve-wracking, or you find that you've got weird sizes, you know, if you find that domestic patterns don't fit you very well, then this is a great method to use. And yeah, I hope it helps. So thank you for watching, and bye.